Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Darian the Eclectic, and today we're continuing our series on the story grid writing method. Specifically, we're going to be talking about genre and obligatory scenes within those genres and things that are defined specifically by the story grid writing method. I find this really helpful because it provides you that creative box to work within. And while a lot of people might think that a creative box is limiting, I personally find it very helpful because if I have too many options, I tend to get overwhelmed, analysis paralysis sets in, and I'm really not able to write. So having the confines of all these little rules and formulas and things that I can use actually helps me be more creative in writing something that readers are going to want to read. And the reason this method was developed is because there are certain things within different genres that readers expect to find. And so if you don't satisfy those reader needs, then the reader is going to leave the book, maybe even before they finish it, unsatisfied. So the first one we talked about was the thriller genre, and I'll link to that video in the top, at the end, in the cards. It'll be linked somewhere, so you'll be able to find it. But the next one we're going to talk about is the crime genre. And while this is and can be similar to the thriller genre, there are certain things that are very different about it. And first, we're going to talk about genre conventions for the crime genre. And the first thing in genre conventions for a crime genre is that a crime disrupts the ordinary world. So you might think of this and be familiar with it as like the beginning of the book, the beginning of this TV show, the beginning of the movie. A crime occurs and we don't yet meet the protagonist or anything. After the crime occurs is when we actually meet the detective or the sleuth or the cozy person that is investigating for whatever reason that the crime occurred. So that's the first one. A crime disrupts the ordinary world. The second genre convention is a protagonist who is a detective, and this can either be a professional detective or an amateur detective. And this is the difference usually between a hard crime genre and like a cozy crime genre. So if they're a professional, they're a detective, a cop, someone who does this for a living. And if they're an amateur, they probably do something else for a living, but for whatever reason, this crime is something that they feel the need to solve. They have to solve it. If you go way, way, way back, you might be familiar with Murder, She Wrote, and that would be amateur sleuthing, right? She wasn't a detective by trade, but she often found herself in the middle of a crime and had the need to solve it. Now, a professional one would be like Law and Order. A crime occurs and the professionals are the ones who go about solving that crime. Now, the third genre convention for the crime genre is the villain who is equal to the protagonist, someone who is just as smart, if not smarter. And the detective, the sleuth, has a really hard time figuring out all the details and clues and finding this bad guy. Now, this is something you can think about with Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty. They are equal to, if not Moriarty being more smart than Sherlock Holmes with each and every crime that occurs, with Sherlock getting closer and closer to Moriarty. He actually toys with him and plays with him as they go about, as Sherlock goes about solving those crimes. The fourth genre convention for the crime genre is a series of red herrings and clues. Now, the red herrings are false clues. These are the things that the villain plants or maybe the detective thinks is a lead, and they go down and they chase it only to wind up in a dead end. That's what a red herring is. Now, the genuine clues are things that are leading us to understand the purpose, motive, villain behind the crime that occurred at the beginning. The fifth genre convention in the crime genre is a progressively complicated investigation. So as they uncover more clues, as they realize more about this crime, it becomes more and more complicated. Maybe the motive is bigger than what they initially thought. Instead of it being a single murder, they slowly discover that this is a serial killer and that there are going to be more murders that they uncover, and they have to stop the next murder from happening. So it becomes increasingly complicated. And that can tie into the villain toying with the protagonist or the sleuth, the detective. Now, there are 5 obligatory scenes when it comes to the crime genre that readers are going to expect to find. So if you're going to be writing in the crime genre, just make sure that you have these 5 obligatory scenes so that it earmarks this as something your reader is going to be looking for, something they're going to be interested in, and they're going to be satisfied when they find them. The first one is an inciting crime. Like I said before, the story starts out with the crime occurring, and then we meet the protagonist, the sleuth, then we meet the villain, then we start to uncover the mystery. The second obligatory scene is that the protagonist is the one investigating. So every clue that we have has to be the protagonist as the one who is uncovering it, as the one who is chasing the villain, chasing down the mystery and trying to find the answers. If it's not the protagonist that you find yourself writing about, uncovering the clues, then maybe you've misidentified the protagonist, or maybe it's a different kind of story. The third obligatory scene is the discovery of the criminal's identity. Obviously, we have to find out who the one that is committing these crimes is. So the detective has to eventually figure out who the villain is within this story. The fourth obligatory scene is the confrontation with the criminal. So the protagonist has to go up against the villain at some point. This could be the point where the villain monologues, telling the story and filling in the gaps of why they did this and what the purpose is. It can be that final showdown where the detective is the one who, tries their best, keeps failing, hits rock bottom, and then finally succeeds in taking down the villain. Either way, we've got to figure out who that villain is, and we've got to see the protagonist face off against that villain for it to be a satisfying crime genre story. And finally, the fifth obligatory scene in the crime genre is that justice or injustice is served. So you might see this in a lot of superhero shows and superhero stories, is that eventually the good guy gets the bad guy. Now, a lot of popular stories nowadays can have the good guy failing at certain points, but the overall ending is going to be the good guys win out in the end. So either way, there is an ending to this story. The good guy gets the bad guy, or the bad guy gets away, setting us up for yet another chase in a sequel, for example, where the detective is going to continue to try and get that bad guy. So those were the crime genre obligatory scenes and conventions that you should find if you are writing a crime genre story. And this is all according to the story grid method. If you enjoyed this video and you want me to continue to outline all the different genres within the story grid method, the conventions and obligatory scenes and things you should find within these different types of stories, please let me know down in the comments below. List your favorite genre and the one you want me to cover next. And if you want to see these videos as soon as they come out, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you get notified the second I release my next video. All right. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.